Welcome to Pen and Board. I'm Rich. Let's take a seat because I'm here to convince you why you should be playing Alien the Roleplay game, Evolved Edition. Let's go. Alien the Roleplay game uses a D6 pool system. So essentially you take your character's attributes, whatever they may be, and the associated skill, add those two numbers together, collect that many D6, give them a roll, and you're looking for sixes for success. Boop. 1 6 is enough to successfully pass that skill. However, there are interesting things you can do with multiple successes. These are called stunts. They're not like kickflips or anything else, although you could ask your mother if you could do a kickflip as well, but they are essentially if you want to do the skill faster or quicker, or if you wanted to make sure you could do the skill better next time, anything like that. Or if the mother, the game's game master, has a good idea of what additional successes could be used on, that can also be used as well. Well, that might sound nice and simple and easy. Alien adds a little black goo into the dice pool system. It has a stress mechanic. So as you encounter the horrors of the universe, watching your colleague's chest explode with an alien being, and then that alien being scuttle across the floor into an air vent, leaving a trail of blood, can be a little stressful. So every time you encounter something like that, or some other stresses, you gain a level of stress. This is then used whenever you collect your dice pool up for another test. So you collect your normal dice, then you add in any stress levels you have in the form of these yellow or alternative color stress dice. You roll them all together, so it does increase your chances of success. However, if you were to roll a 1, or these fancy face hugger symbols on these dice, on the stress dice, then you are going to potentially panic. Now, when you panic, you do increase your stress level, so you add another potential dice into anything else in future. But also you roll on the stress table. You can still succeed and roll on the stress table if you roll low enough. If you roll any higher, then your action is going to be taken over by whatever's on the chart. So that could be screaming for like a minute or so, or running to find some safety, or dropping an item you're holding. None of them are necessarily good things. Some of them can help you out of a tricky situation if you're being chased by a large xenomorph, but most of them are bad. Also, witnessing someone have a panic attack and stress out and scream can also cause other people to get stressed. So there's a nice little feedback loop within your party where stress then starts to spread across everything else. Now you can calm stress down, there are ways to do that, so you're not just going to ramp up, but it's a nice little mechanic to add a little tension. So that's the basic mechanics and how the game works at a very fundamental level. But why should you play Alien RPG? Have you ever watched any of those films, alien, sci-fi, horror, whatever, and you are shouting at the screen going, "Don't go in that door," or "Don't do this"? Well, now is the chance for you to play in one of these kind of scenarios. The cinematic kind of play format for Alien Roleplay game allows you to dive into these film-like modules and play out a 3-act story arc, where you get to decide if you go in that door or take off your helmet on an alien planet. And that's kind of really fun. I mean, there's a great one over... Where was I? Yeah. There is a bunch of these amazing cinematic adventures that come in that 3-act format, all built with pre-generated characters that you can dive straight in to play with. Every character has a secret agenda for each of the 3 acts. So you can start off just quite casually and normally, just wanting to try and keep everyone safe. But then your agenda might shift based on the narrative that's happening, the cataclysmic disaster that befouls this unbeknownst crew or group of Marines. It could change then, ever so slightly, or you might get certain orders from up high to do something. And it's really nice to have a guiding light when it comes to your role play. I know for people that are a bit apprehensive about what to do for role play and generating characters, playing these pre-described and broken down their abilities and their wants, their needs and their desires into a character is actually really helpful for some people. And it allows you to easily get a hook in to play a character without having to do your big backstory. You've got prompts. They give you connections to other NPCs and characters as well. So it's a real good confined module. And it's not just play it once and done. I've run some of these modules multiple times for multiple groups, and each time is completely different. The module is packed with a variety of different side kind of like agendas and side missions, depending on where the characters and the players drive the story, kind of determines what actually happens. Yes, there are kind of key frames between acts 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and the finale as well that are part of the story, but how they get to those acts and how they solve them. There's multiple different ways to do that, which is really nice. It's in a really nice format. If players and their chosen character dies halfway through as well, there's a slew of other NPC characters that you can pick up from. Often in these scenarios, you can pick from a cast of crew, and anyone that doesn't get picked is just played by the mother. And they can then be taken over by NPCs. And it's really easy to jump into those kind of boots because they have that character sheet that's prescribed of how they need to act, any agendas they have, and what pre-relationships they have with the rest of the crew. If you play into your agenda and the mother deems that you have done it, then you can get story points, which are kind of like auto successes to skill checks in the future. So it's really beneficial to play up to your agenda. You don't have to, you just won't get any story points, but it's really nice to play into that agenda of your character. And sometimes there are some villains, some traitors and stuff. Playing into that bad guy can actually be really fun. There are also some modules with some really big reveals in there as well. Obviously I won't spoil them here, but they are quite fun when you come across them. While currently here we have the Evolved edition, the newest kind of release from Free League, the previous editions are all completely valid as well. This is not necessarily a second edition, it's more of a 1.5. So all of the previous adventures and materials and expansion books are all 100% valid. This mainly like tightens up things like redoes how armor works, tightens up some timings when it comes to combat and like shifts and all that stuff, and just smooths out some of the more cumbersome mechanics from the previous edition, as it were. I've run like Hadley's Hope and Chariots of the Gods, stuff from the previous starter sets and the core books before in this new system now, and it works seamlessly. So there is already a nice backlog of material for it, so don't feel like you need to be restarting everything if you're jumping into the Evolved edition. You don't need to. You don't just have to play in these cinematic scenarios though for one-shots or like multi-session shots. You can play in an expanding campaign, but they do work slightly differently than your traditional fantasy roleplay games. You are normal people. You're not a hero going off to complete a quest. You are someone that has been thrust into unfortunate circumstances when you're already pretty much at the bottom of the food chain. Yes, you might be playing a company man during one of your campaigns, but you're not anyone that has any significant power. So you are pretty much a normal person, and that's really fun to play, especially in a world that's built around these large corporations and huge corruptions. And you're expanding into this unknown universe and encountering weird and wonderful, amazing worlds. Playing a normal person makes everything else so much more dramatic and adds into the tension of a horror campaign. Anyone that has played a horror campaign at all, so things like Call of Cthulhu for longer campaigns, will know that keeping that tension across multiple sessions and across a whole campaign is really hard. But what's nice about the Alien universe is you can lean into the Alien franchise films. Take Ripley's journey through the original films as an example. The first film is very tense against a single alien. She gets out of it, she makes it, spoilers, she survives. And in the second film, she goes back into it. Now, why would anyone in their right mind decide to go back into a threat situation that xenomorphs present? And that's where the big bad of the Alien universe comes in, the corporations. They are the ones that are controlling everything. And if you have a lifetime's worth of debt crippling you, maybe the chance to make some money is enough to push someone back into those situations. The campaign frames come in 3 flavors, 2 of which already have books out, and like I said, are already backwards compatible, so you have no problems with the Evolved Edition. The first one, you play as Colonial Marines, your classic Aliens film. You go out on a bug hunt, trying to shoot them down, and it's a lot more action orientated and less horror orientated. The second book focuses on frontier colonists, so that kind of has the vibes of like Covenant and Prometheus, where you're on a world or exploring a world or a station and you're uncovering these mysteries along the way. So you might encounter an alien ship that's been crashed, or you might encounter an alien artifacts or some lost ruins on a planet. The third and final option is Space Truckers. It's got a book coming out at some point and it has more of the vibes of Alien, I can imagine. I think that's where the Rapture Protocol, the new kind of starter adventure module is set in that kind of Space Trucker frame, where you are unfortunate people that get embroiled in some corporation as well as mysterious xenomorphs, aliens, and all that kind of things. Obviously not going to spoil anything in there, but if you look at the cover, there's an alien on it. However, you can't just have your crew of space truckers or your Colonial Marines wake up from cryo every time to a disaster that is xenomorphs or an abandoned ship with mysteriously absent crew. It just doesn't work, and the third and fourth time that you do that to your players, it's gonna get boring and the tension suddenly wraps down. So how can you maintain the horror and the tension over a longer period of time? Well, that's it. You take it over a longer period of time. The big bad is the corporations. They're the ones that are doing the bad things, and you're either trying to fight against them and survive against the horrors of the universe, or you're joining with them and becoming the bad guys to try and get yourself out of worse situations. What this can be like in practice is you can have a campaign frame where you're colonists on a world and something might happen. Some huge harvester worms kind of like burst out of the ground and you have to deal with that disaster as it happens. Once that kind of scenario is concluded, things go back to normal for a bit. So you might have a in-between kind of scenario gap of a couple of years. You could have some downtime between there, role play some character development, but then you pick up with those characters again later when they're digging for resources and mining and they uncover a mysterious ruin. Then you play out that. It happens, blah, 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 you progress. Breaking your kind of campaign down into those kind of segments allows you to follow the same characters through a greater story arc, but keeping the tension each time, because there is a reset point between where you can then reset the tension and then ramp it back up again. It's the only way I've really found to do long form horror campaigns is that kind of format, because you can't just keep people tense. And then when people go away and come back between sessions, you lose all the tension, have to build it up again anyway. It's the same reason why the cinematic adventures work really well on those 3 acts. even if you can't get through all 3 acts in an evening or in a session, you can break them up between acts 1, 2, and 3 and do it over 3 nights or 3 sessions. That way, each act can have their own build and tension, kind of like ramping up to the final one where it all comes to a head. There is more to fear in the alien universe than xenomorphs. We've already spoken about big corporations being the big bad evils, but in the extended universe, in the books, in the video games, all those kind of things, there are other threats. So there are synths, there are rogue androids, there are other human beings that are lost out in space trying to salvage things. They are also legitimate threats that you can encounter in the Alien RPG. Also, there are a plethora of other alien species as well that you can encounter, and also there's the mysterious black goo or anything of those kind of like varieties as well. So don't just think of this as you're going to be playing as against xenomorphs. You can if you want to, but there's plenty of other things you can play in there. And at the end of the day, it's a sci-fi horror game. So you can add whatever you want in there. Gain inspiration from films like Sunshine. I know it goes off the rails towards the end. I really like it. The idea of going mad, really good. Adds into the stress mechanic as well. Or things even like Event Horizon. I've written and run a module using Alien on Event Horizon, and it went really well because it is just a space horror theme. Now, due to the cinematic nature of the cinematic play, as well as to a degree the campaigns, you need the story to progress for things to happen. You can't just let your players wander around and like get bored, not being able to open a door to get into the next section. The areas you play in are all confined and restricted. So you can't have points that a player can fail. So the book itself and the game itself adopts the fail forwards kind of system. So you are encouraged to, even on a failed roll, to allow the action to happen, but with consequences. I love consequences, and I kind of adopt this in most of my roleplay games because I like my players to progress the story, but at the same time, I like them to have repercussions for their actions. So for instance, if you are trying to lock a door and you fail your roll, I'm still going to allow you to lock the door, but it might now be permanently locked. So you can no longer access that part of the ship anymore, or you have to go around a different way to access it, which might come in later when you're being chased by a xenomorph and this is your only way out, and you get stuck behind that door. I feel it's a nice way to add a narrative twist to something, which would otherwise be a, oh, I've just failed, move on moment. And I think it's really nice for player agency and for Games Master or Mother agency as well. Sometimes when playing tabletop roleplay games, it really sucks to fail. And when it's a crucial moment where you need to succeed, you've done everything right, you've come up with a really cool plan, you roll and you fail. Now you can have consequences and it can still be a cool narrative moment, but as a player, you want to have some sort of control over the outcomes of your actions. You may have stacked all of the stats in your favor and still failed. And this is where pushing comes in. I love pushing mechanics. I love it in Call of Cthulhu and I love it in Alien as well. It allows you to re-roll your dice, adding an extra bit of stress and trying again. However, the consequences of failing a pushed action are usually a lot more severe. So it gives the player agency and control over, I really want to succeed this, I'm going to give this a go. But at the same time, adds the tension of, if you fail, it's going to be bad. And I love that for horror roleplay games. It really feeds into the playstyle and the tension and can create some really fun narrative moments. And if they push it and they succeed, perfect. They've done what they wanted to do. They've set up this amazing plan and they've succeeded on it. So it's a win-win in both situations, I find. Now, Rapture Protocol comes with a little mini expansion for a tabletop kind of like miniatures combat. So if you are playing an Aliens style game and you want to just play into all of that and have miniatures on the tables where you're all defending and fighting off against multiple aliens, then this is a really nice way to do it. I'm in the middle of painting and constructing my wonderful little scenario here. Haven't got very far, but I'm doing it. I want to show it off. But they have some amazing miniatures out there, and it's a really fun kind of rule set. The rules for miniatures combat is slightly more toned down from the general combat rules in the book as well. So you could even just play this as a fun miniatures game if you wanted to. But otherwise you can use the normal combat from the book with miniatures. I just think it adds a nice bit of variety in there. And yeah, who doesn't want to just do a standoff against multiple different aliens with your little minis? And for all those reasons, that's why I think you should be playing Alien the Roleplay game, Evolved Edition. Now, if you don't want to pick up this, there are some alternatives. If you want that spooky space sci-fi vibe, then Mothership is an amazing alternative. It's a bit more rules light, but the best thing is the community around Mothership is amazing. They have done a phenomenal amount of hundreds of scenarios and expansions that you can dive into. You could even use them for Alien RPG as well. You don't have to use them for Mothership. They are really good because they are that rules light kind of frame set. If you want more of the frontier survival, then there is Death in Space as well. If you just like horror and you like it a bit more eldritch and unknown, Call of Cthulhu is a good one. And also, if you like the sci-fi, you like the space, don't like the horror, then Stars Without Number is an amazing kind of like D&D-esque kind of game where you can play out your space fantasies. There is a bunch of other ones as well that I haven't mentioned, but those are a few of my favorites that I like to play. Personally, I also like Dark Matter, a 5-year expansion by Mage Hand Press, because I like the more whimsical fun side of things, especially when I play D&D. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little walkthrough and maybe have convinced you to try out the Alien roleplay game. Oh, my chest's a little tight. If you like this video, then please give it a little like. If you want to see more, then please subscribe. Otherwise, until next time, I'm just going to go deal with this. It's a really tight chest.